Welcome to the Small Business Solutions Series, where the Washington County Chamber's Small Business Entrepreneurial Council, or the SBEC as we call it, puts together a series of informational presentations with an expert on a topic that is relevant for small businesses. Before I have our presenters introduce themselves today and get started, I first like to introduce our sponsor for the SBSS series this year, Elizabeth Case of Yellow Dog Consulting. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Titonian. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Case. I own Yellow Dog Consulting. I do email marketing for small business owners. So I am a certified MailChimp partner. And so every time you go to send out that newsletter and then lots of four-letter words come out of your mouth and you want to throw your computer out the window, I am the person that can help you take that off your plate, help make it a little more seamless for you in your processes. So I will throw my website in the chat if you have any questions or want to learn a little bit more about it. But thanks for having me, and thanks for being here today. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for sponsoring the SBSS for 2022. We really appreciate it. So today we have Neil Hatler and Eric Steffes of Systems LLC, who will be talking about cybersecurity for small business. Definitely a relevant topic for businesses really of any size that are concerned about protecting their own or their clients' data. So today you may hear more about what is cybersecurity, how to protect your business from cyber attacks, ransomware, phishing, spoofing, and anything else these two gentlemen would like to share about the topic today. So with that being said, I'd like to hand it over to Neil Hatler and Eric Steffes of Systems LLC.
Thank you very much, Titonian. I'd like to, Eric, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick.
Yep, my name is Eric Steffes. I've been with Stable Systems for a little over 4 years now. And, we run into cybersecurity on a daily basis, and we are constantly educating ourselves about the topic to make sure that we can provide, the best course of action for our clients.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to just take a moment and thank my friends at BNI for organizing this, as well as Washington County Chamber of Commerce and the SBC for having us. Just a brief history, Stable Systems has been around since 1999. I purchased the company in 2003 and have just been kind of growing slowly ever since then. And security has been a part of that since day one. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. Anytime you can spread this word, I think it's a good word to spread. So I'll touch on a number of things. We won't take a super deep dive with the presentation, but just to clarify some of the ongoing concerns and threats, many products and practices that one can implement for free, and then other on paid services and devices as well. So if Eric, if you would go to the first slide for me. Obviously, the old adage, an ounce of prevention is indeed worth a pound of cure. Your end users are your front line. The companies we support range from 1 user on up to 220. And so it's interesting, very rarely have I come across a security issue that got through to a CEO or CFO. They're always too busy doing work. They're using their computers as a business tool. Typically it's on down the line where we see the infections occur. And so ensuring that your end users are educated, up to date on current threats, what to do, what not to do, that's your first level of defense. If we're not already doing so, I recommend restricting personal use of corporate resources. And you might later on in the presentation, you'll see the acronym BYOD, that's bring your own device. And I always wag my finger at employers that allow this, because what happens when mom gives their child the laptop that she's using to remote into her office with, and obviously bad things can happen. And so I found that in the long run, it's best for companies to provide their end users with their own devices and restrict access. That really prevents a lot of problems. One term I like to bring to your knowledge you might be familiar with is it's called geo-IP filtering. Geo is short for geographical. Overwhelmingly, what we see in the field are cyber attacks originating from specific locations, Russia, China, and Africa, namely. A lot of the bad guys will disguise themselves by using what's known as proxy servers. So I'll start my hacking from, say, Moscow, but I'll bounce to a proxy server on the dark web to disguise where I'm coming from. So what we recommend is using an enterprise class firewall that has the ability to block traffic based on its origination. Now, we've all heard the term IP address in all likelihood. IP address simply is similar to a physical mailing address, only on the internet. That's what identifies one's location. So using geo-IP filtering or blocking, we simply block all traffic that originates from China or Russia, unless we have someone that has a need to travel there, for example, and then we open access up during that time period, and then we close it down when they're back. I can't tell you, just the overwhelming percentage of attacks drop off at that point in time when that is done. A more proactive service that is available these days are simulated attacks, and they're often bundled with end user education and training. One of our business partners, some of you might be familiar with Opus Interactive. They're out in Hillsboro. Great company. They have their primary data center that's there in Hillsboro, and they have data centers in Texas and North Carolina as well, I believe. And they are partners with a company called Illumint, and they offer a number of levels of training. It could be virtual, it could be video only. They will also come on site and meet with your team, do a training. More importantly, you can subscribe to a service that is simulated attacks. And what that looks like, they will send fraudulent emails disguised, and it's like a test. And based on your and your users' reactions, they keep a database of this, and then they provide you with information. And you can use it for training. Say, hey, this really didn't come from UPS, and this is how it looked like it did. Please be more aware of what you're looking at. Another company, a big company, is called Barracuda Networks. You might be familiar with them. You might see their ads in the airports. We are partners with them, and you'll hear me touch on their product line. They have a real comprehensive suite of products, and they have a similar line called a similar service called Phishing. Again, they have end user training, and then it will also generate simulated attacks. Eric, if you could go to the next slide, please. So these are some things that I think everyone should do right now. Again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but it is the most important aspect, and that is to implement regular end user training. If you're not already doing so, real-time email and web monitoring. Just yesterday, we went on site to do an initial audit for a new customer, and not a single one of the computers had antivirus. And that was quite a shock to me in today's times, I got to admit, but it just goes to show you there's still people out there unaware of the need for this. And again, that's a very preventative, very cost-effective solution everyone should have. We also recommend an enterprise level firewall for many of the reasons that I've mentioned regarding geo blocking, for example. But just to speak a little bit about what a firewall does. Say, I have a Comcast business service. I called them, they said, yes, my modem is a firewall as well. Well, technically, a firewall opens or closes a port. Now, there's roughly 65,000 and change ports that can be used on the internet. Majority of those are blocked by a firewall. That's passive activity. I'm either going to allow traffic, I'm going to deny traffic. An enterprise level firewall such as a sonic wall, will provide dynamic services, such as real-time scanning of traffic coming and going. And again, that is an invaluable tool for preventing cyber attacks. When it comes to constructing a network security infrastructure, we recommend a layered security option. And the best analogy I can liken this to is one's home. So let's say I live in a gated community. I'm going to have a lock on my door. I might have a security camera, security system, things of this nature. I'm going to have more hoops for the bad guys to jump through to try and get into my home. That's how one should structure a network security. Firewall, antivirus, scanning here. I'm going to have email security. Those are the layers that I'm speaking to. And always operate under the assumption that an unknown source is a potential threat. Do I know this person? If not, that's when my red flags go up. Okay, Eric, next slide, please. Now, these are your must-have security products, in our opinion. Again, the enterprise level firewall. Don't just use what Comcast or Quest or what your internet service provider sent you. Use an antivirus and use a paid product. Antivirus is not expensive. It's going to range from $15 to $29 a year, typically, depending on what product you go with. I can't tell you how many free antivirus products that I've come across that simply did not do the job. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, is now shipping their operating systems with a product called Microsoft Defender. Now, that's a great intention on the part of Microsoft, but I think that they should stick to operating systems and Microsoft Office products and leave security products to the specialists. I would not recommend relying on Microsoft Defender alone to protect your computer systems from a PC or Mac standpoint. Again, our product of choice is called ESET, E-S-E-T, and they have many options to choose from standalone antivirus products to integrated software-based firewalls. So let's say, hey, I don't want to buy, I'm a one-person shop, I don't want to buy a $3,000 sonic wall. The full ESET security suite will give you a software-based firewall that will, in essence, do the same thing for you. And lastly, backup. Backup. This is the end-all be-all as far as protecting your critical data. I can't tell you how many times I've come across people say, "Oh yeah, I back up my data. I have an external hard drive, and I copy my data over to that hard drive." Inevitably, 6 months down the road, we're called, have a problem, need to restore data. Okay, when's your last backup? Oh, 3 months ago. Well, have fun generating 3 months worth of invoices. So I recommend an automated system. And I like a hybrid configuration, meaning I store data both on-premise and off-site in the cloud. Now, some of you might recall back in the day, we used to back up using tapes. Well, the challenge with keeping data on-premise only is that data can walk away. It can be damaged, it can be destroyed. I've had 3 clients that have suffered fires in their offices. Had the backups been all on-premise, poof, it's gone. And so I like to have it on-premise because if I have to restore a lot of data, I'm going to be able to pull a lot of data from a local source a lot quicker than down from the internet. So that's what I mean when I refer to a hybrid configuration. I recommend a regular backup integrity checks and alerts. Hey, is my backup functioning or has it been corrupted? And how do I know that? Again, Barracuda Networks offers a backup product that we utilize that I configure email alerts on any number of variables: success, a failure, warnings. And then, are you testing your backups? Hey, I'll call a customer, give me a random file you'd like me to restore. I'll do that on the back end just to confirm the integrity of our backups. And on top of that, be sure and utilize a high level of protection for your backup. Encrypt your data if it's local. If it's offsite, use two-factor authentication to access that data. and use a hard password to access that information. Any questions so far? Okay, great. Let's move on, Eric. Other recommended, a little more advanced security solutions we like to go with, again, Barracuda Networks, email security. It's as I mentioned, a comprehensive suite from email scanning, filtering, anti-phishing, anti-impersonation. It can run forensics, of which I will speak about in a little bit. But there's any number of other products out there, third-party products, that can offer email security. And how that works is, I'm sure many of us use O365 for our email host. And again, Microsoft product, they have their onboard spam and virus filtering solution, and it works well. But I want to depend on specialists for my security solutions. That's all they do. Microsoft does a lot of things good. I want somebody that does something very well. And so utilize a third-party email solution is a great way to prevent phishing attacks, for example, to prevent spoofing, things of that nature. On one's local system, along with an antivirus product, we've had great success with a product called Malwarebytes. It used to be free back in the day, and technicians such as ourselves really took advantage of that. And it's really lightweight, so it can work in tandem with whatever your antivirus solution of choice is. And that's not always the case. One doesn't want to use two antivirus. I want to use Norton, Symantec, and McAfee in the same system. They're just going to fight. Malwarebytes plays well with others, and it's just a good one. And on occasion, it will find things that ESET, for example, will not. And thirdly, I would recommend using, again, a third-party web browser. Now, Apple in their infinite wisdom has Safari and whatever browsers to come with Chrome or Internet Explorer, now known as Edge, with Windows. That's great, but they have security holes far and wide in them. Chrome was a great option for many, many years. Recently, some of you may be familiar with the web browser called Brave, and I really like this browser, both from a security end, but also from an end user perspective as well. It's really great. The default home screen will display information that is done for you, such as ad blocking or how much bandwidth is relieved, or it tells you who's been looking at trying to look at your traffic and things that they've blocked. So I encourage you to investigate Brave. It is multi-platform, so it will work on for Apple devices as well as mobile phones. Okay, Eric, next slide, please. Now, taking a dive into a little more depth about some of the real threats we have. Ransomware is probably one of the nastiest out there. If you haven't been a victim of ransomware, chances are you know someone that has. And it's malware that, when infected on a system or systems, will encrypt either data locally, such as operating system or program files, rendering the computer useless. But on a wider scale, it will go out to look for network shared resources, shared folders. If any of us work in a larger environment, I have shared folders out there. I have accounting data that we access. What ransomware will do, it will go out, it will encrypt all of that data, and that will pop up a message on the infected system saying, we have your decryption key. If you want it, send $50,000 in Bitcoin to this account, and we'll give you your decryption key 10 to 14 days later. Okay. I've worked with the FBI directly in about 3 cases of ransomware, and they recommend not paying the ransom. I'm not going to bring Kevin in to tell us his horror story, but just thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars have been paid and lost due to ransomware. And really, the best protection against ransomware, once you get hit, is your backup. Now, the process for identifying when ransomware hits is to do a complete systems audit. The largest scale ransomware attack that I've ever dealt with, we had to do a complete sweep, and I identified 2 of the 3 systems that were infected, and I thought we were good to go. So I took those two systems offline, started restoring data, and before my very eyes, I started seeing the data being encrypted again. I'm like, oh no, we got another one. So had to go through, find the impacted system, remove it, restore data once again, and then we were good to go. That was a lengthy overnight process, but that's all it was. It was very minimal downtime given the scale of the attack. And we're talking about terabytes of data encrypted and potentially lost. One of the aspects of the Barracuda email security features that I mentioned is called forensics. And one of the great aspects of that is if the threat came in via email, it will identify that. And in almost all cases, a virus, what does it want to do? It wants to proliferate itself. And so what it's going to do is going to email itself out to all known contacts, typically within the affected person's contact list. And that's going to go to just about all your company members. And so what the forensics will do has the ability to scan everyone's mailbox for that, isolate, delete it, get rid of it, whatever you choose to do. So that's a great aspect of that product. Next slide, please, Eric. Next challenge is, again, we've all heard of phishing. My scary phishing story is we had an end user receive an email claiming to be from Microsoft saying, hey, it's time to renew your annual support. Pay here $299. Oh, okay, I'm going to do it. We had the official Microsoft logo, everything looked legit. 24 hours later, gets an email notice. Okay, it's time for us to put a remote support utility on your computer. Oh, no problem. Boom. Come to find, this person had a Word document on their desktop labeled passwords. Had every bank account, credit card, Venmo, PayPal, personal, business email. Locked them out of their own systems. $80,000 later, we're brought in. I end up locking him out of his own system for 2 days just to protect himself. So phishing attacks almost always originate from email. That's the most common method that it comes in. And it's again, they're phishing for something. They're attempting to attain any kind of information about you. 1 ounce of prevention we can all consider is removing valid email addresses from your website. Hey, Neil at stable-systems.com. What does that tell the bad guy? That tells him half of what he needs to know to get into my stuff. A better practice would be to input a contact us form on your websites. And I'm sure you've all gone through that because the bad guys have bots and they just go out and they just seek and they look for actual valid email addresses. And that gives them, okay, this is where we're going to start. This is where we're going to start targeting. The aforementioned person that fell victim is going to be a victim target the rest of his life because the bad guys are sharing his name and email address all throughout the dark web. You can bet on that. And it got to be so bad that the consideration was made to change his entire domain name just to be done with it, because they're going to keep knocking. They're going to keep trying to come in. Hey, we know this guy is gullible. We're going to keep trying. And again, third-party solutions can be deployed to help combat this. And I've already mentioned the Barracuda Network's fish line and their training. Next slide, please, Eric. Spoofing. This is a little less known a challenge, and it comes in a couple of flavors, but it's overall the act of disguising a communication from an unknown source as being from a known trusted source. And there's a couple of things I really wanted to make you aware of. The more common options are. I'm going to refer back to, hey, if my email address is on my website, if my team members' email addresses or names are on their website, then I know who I'm dealing with. So there's nothing to say that I can't say, okay, I'm going to make an email address called titonianwallace@gmail.com. I don't have to prove that I'm Titonian Wallace, but that's how I appear. So let's say I get into one of Titonian's systems and I go through his contact list and I start emailing people that he knows from the email address that I just created. Most people they only see to Tony and Wallace. Hey, that's a known trusted source. I know this person. But they don't realize it's not their actual email address. I've seen many, many problems originate from that kind of actions. And there's very little one can do from stopping someone from creating a false email address. There are things one can do to secure your own domains, and I'll touch on those in just a minute. And so, again, this can be via email, a website, but more often than not, they originate from the Gmails, from the Yahoos, MSNs of the world, because they're simply not monitored, and it's easy to spin up, for lack of a better term, a burner email account, and that's what they do. It's kind of a way for the bad guys to get their foot in the door. That's what spoofing is. Hey, can I trick somebody into thinking I'm somebody else? And then will lead to more elaborate phishing scams. Now, assuming most of us own our own domain names and are in control of those, there are some free things that we can do. And cybersecurity and the prevention of it's a battle that always goes like this. The bad guys are always one step ahead of the good guys. All right, we figure out what they're doing, we catch up with them. They figure out something else. We go like this, and that's just how it's always going to be. So an earlier adoption of securing one's email domains was called SPF records. A more modern one is called DKIM protection, and now that is an email authentication method. It uses a digital signature to confirm you are who you say you are. DMARC is a similar, more modern, more recent practice of doing the same, and those are done at the domain level, at the DNS host, if that anybody knows what that is. But and they can be used either on their own or in tandem. So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC can all be used, and you can do this today. There is no charge to do that, and it's used by both sender and recipient to confirm that the message is valid, the sender is valid, as well as the message content has not been manipulated. So that's what those services do. And again, those can be implemented today, right now, right after we hang up. So next slide, please, Eric. Additional recommended practices. Again, keep your business and your personal use separate. Say no to bring your own device. When it comes to personal use, everybody's working at home or has been working from home or is working hybrid. Make sure your home network is secure. Do I have secure Wi-Fi at home? Do I change my, when was the last time we all changed our Wi-Fi passwords at home? Probably never. Multi-factor authentication, whenever possible. I hope we're all doing this at minimum with our banking and our financial accounts. We use, again, a third-party product called Duo, and this is a great offering. They can protect a myriad of applications. If anyone ever uses remote desktop to remote to their office computer, that's the most common use of Duo from our end. But it can also be used to protect, hosted applications. For example, if I'm an insurance agent and I have a hosted insurance application, I can use Duo. Hey, I'm going to input my password, but then it's going to send an alert to my phone. Hey, yes, this is me. Always use two-factor authentication whenever you can. I know it's inconvenient, but it's not as inconvenient as losing $80,000. Physical device security. This is something that often gets overlooked. If I have a server or an important computer or a network attached storage device or a backup hard drive, where am I keeping that? A practice some of our clients undergo is we'll do a one-time backup to an external hard drive. They'll take it and they'll put it in a safety deposit box. Stay up to date with your software. Microsoft updates seem kind of inane sometimes, but it is important. Keep your antivirus versions current. And again, backup, and then check your backup. And then this is the last slide, Eric. Again, I want to say thank you. That's just, again, a brief overview of cybersecurity and concerns. You can obviously visit our website for a little more information. I have to run to my mechanic now to drop my car off and pick up a loaner, but Eric is going to hang out and participate in the Q&A. But again, you can reach us through our website, and we can go from there. Thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Neil. We appreciate it. I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Deanna? I just saw you go out. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Neil, and Eric from Stable Systems LLC. And now we'll open the floor to any questions or comments. Feel free to raise your hand virtually, or with the icon or whatnot, and we'll go ahead and get some questions for Eric while Neil takes off. Do we have any at the moment? And if not, I'll go ahead and get started. So Eric,
Yeah.
Neil mentioned Duo for two-factor authentication purposes. What are your thoughts about businesses using Google Authenticator for two-factor authentication?
It's the exact same thing. So if you can use any authentication app, it is better than nothing. So we just recommend Duo because that's what we've taken training courses on how to set it up. We know what it can cover and we know what it does, but all authenticator apps usually work the same. Just depends on who they're partnered with and what they can cover. So most banks, websites, logging into your domain account on the internet, logging into your banks, logging into Comcast on the internet, you can set up a text code to your phone or anything of that matter. It's the same thing as just using an authenticator app, as long as there's some form of, is this you? Can you confirm that it's you? It's always very important.
So
Eric,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Deanna.
I was just going to ask him to maybe stop sharing so we can see if anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Okay. So with that two-factor authentication, like there's different levels, and I'd like to ask which would you, as far as being in the IT field, would prefer businesses use. So for example, it can be an authenticator app, it can be a text message sent to your phone, or it can be an email sent. Some apps or services, depending on which one you have, say, okay, would you like to activate two-factor authentication? Which method would you prefer? In your opinion, which is the best what method to use?
Okay, yeah. So sorry, I'm having a hard time. I can't find where my meeting controls went. Is there any way that you can stop my sharing by chance?
I'm looking for that option. I will. You go ahead, and I'll.
Deanna, if you hit the share button down below, it should say stop sharing.
Yeah, that little bar where that exists is just not appearing anymore. So not sure where that went.
Are you able to remove hosting?
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So I think Duo would probably, or Google Authenticator. I know there's multiple other apps that you can use to authenticate yourself into specific applications, websites, and things of that nature, your email. There is a limit of what specific apps can cover. For example, Google Authenticator probably can't cover your Comcast login when you try to sign in through the internet. So we come into a position of, well, I can use Duo for my remote desktop into the office. I can use Google Authenticator for my banks and maybe to log into my Venmo account. And then for these other email accounts or this other website accounts like Comcast or GoDaddy.com for your domain or whatever you're using, they send me a text or an email. So there isn't really a good app on the market right now that can cover everything. And I really think that's an issue that needs to be addressed, maybe a good business opportunity for someone. But if at all possible, use Google Authenticator for as much as you can. if you have Duo, use that for what you can. And if it's just a text to your phone, if you have to put in your phone number and they send you a text when you're trying to log into something, that is much, much better than someone being able to get your password and log in and do whatever they want. So that, no, I would say no, there's not a best practice app that you can use for everything, but at least attempt to try as much as you can, whether it be phone number or application.
Great, thank you. Now, what about, I'm sorry, go ahead, Deanna.
I was just going to bring up that, so we have Barracuda, we have Sonic Wall. So I really appreciated that you talked about those products. However, the one thing that we haven't found a cure for is, and I think that Neil touched on it, that there's not really any way to block it, is the spoofing. And it's really very odd, because like my staff will get an email, a staff person will get an email from me, looks like it's from me, and the one that's most common is the gift card request. So will you urgently go and buy some gift cards for me, and then they'll respond and say either, okay, I'm on it, or can I grab the credit card? And this person responds to them, and so it looks like they're having an interactive conversation with me, and that creates all sorts of difficulties. Now, I would say that most of the time this is for fairly new staff that don't know that I don't have that bad of grammar, that I wouldn't be writing in an email like that. But is there no way, and when you toggle over, so when you look at the email and you toggle over my name, it shows that other alias account that is coming from that @Gmail account. That's obviously not me, but this is a real problem. And is there no way to stop it?
There are ways to help. There's never going to be a way to keep them out permanently. They, like Neil said, they're here, we are here, we get here, they go here. So the best thing you could possibly do is always educate. This is the first line. Always educate the people in your business. Say, am I emailing you about anything money related? How about instead of emailing about money related items, let's do a phone call. That way I know it's you, I know we're on a secure line, and I'm not sending any banking information over an email. The next thing would be, if there's ever a link, any attachments, anything like that in an email that you receive, always go up and check the email address. And this is where it gets difficult, because almost daily at this point, I'm seeing emails that are coming in to our clients, and they, hey, it looks, his name is Joe at godaddy.com, but there's a third D in the email. So they can actually create these domains, and they will pay for it just to get people's information like this. So it's always important to say, hey, this has an attachment, it has a link, and it is something that we're talking about. So it makes sense that they would send this, but always make sure to go up and say, okay, take a really good look at the email address. And if there's any differentiation of that email address, then report it to your IT company. Give us a call. We can help out, but I think the education is the best part to defend against that. And the other things, which are very much more in depth, but can be set up, or what Neil mentioned with DKIM, DMARC, and SPF. And this happens at your domain level. And this verifies the servers that you are sending email from and receiving from. And there are little signatures that prove that this is a trusted source. And if anyone's curious about it, it's a huge topic, so it would take me a long time to explain this. But if anyone's curious, you can always reach out to us, and we can help you figure out how to set that up, or get someone to help you to figure out how to set that up.
Hey, Eric, something that our company does, and I don't know if this still prevents it, is Microsoft Teams. If we communicate internally, we go on Microsoft Teams. We don't send emails. Would that help prevent that? Because then it's like, okay, this is coming from Deanna because it's on Teams. It's not through the email.
Right. So
Communicating through an internal
yeah. So the thing about that, that's great, but if they have access to your email, they have access to your Teams as well.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm wanting to know is, do they have access to do that as well?
Yeah. So I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that no matter what you're using, whether it be Slack, Zoom messaging, if people still use Skype, Teams, anything like that, email, never, ever, ever send any bank or password information. If anything like that needs to take place, it's a phone call or it's a text. So we've had, multiple instances of emailing passwords to other employees in the office. Like, hey, what's our bank password to get into our Columbia bank so I can just check on a couple of, invoices that we've received, make sure they went through. Well, there's been someone sitting in his email that gained access a month ago. He's been monitoring this and, I see their bank information right there. Now you're in trouble. But if you have two-factor authentication, they'll never be able to get in. So that's the layered protection that Neil was talking about, which is always important to have. And I do have some horror stories if you guys would like to hear them about that specifically. Yes?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
Okay.
I have one that I want to ask you about because this happened to me. Was somebody got a hold of my cell phone number through Wells Fargo. They changed my cell phone account to AT&T and then texted Wells Fargo for my password and to reset my password on a nonprofit bank account that I had with them. And so, I saw this message and then my phone stopped working and I called Wells Fargo immediately and said, oh yeah, no, we got that request. I said, it wasn't me. And, stopped, but how do you prevent that? Because if they get your cell phone, usually you have it set up to text you your password or something. It's like, oh, hey, great.
So they've received they got your cell phone number
from Wells Fargo. They hacked into Wells Fargo system and got my cell phone number.
So just from your cell phone number, they were able to change your provider?
Yeah.
I've actually never heard of that before.
Yep.
Now, that is very elaborate. So
is that, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. That's almost like what, spoofing a SIM card and everything else involved or something like that?
So that would have to, so who is your original provider?
It was T-Mobile, and I talked to them about it, and they said they'd never had that happen before, but when the Wells Fargo scam happened and the attack on Wells Fargo, they had about 150 clients that had the similar thing happen where they changed their service and then they texted them for the password for their account.
So T-Mobile never reached out and said they never had you on the phone. They were just able to change everything just from a phone number.
Yeah, well, they had all my information because Wells Fargo had my name,
yeah,
my email and my cell phone number, and so then it took me about 2 weeks to get it undone, but it was crazy.
I think in that situation, those companies are at fault.
Yeah,
definitely. I don't think there's anything that you could have done there to prevent that. It would have to be Wells Fargo having better security or T-Mobile needing to speak with you. And this should have been an in-person deal, I think. That's crazy. I've never heard that before. So I'll go on to share my horror story of our big contracting construction company that we work with. Before Microsoft started their widespread two-factor authentication for their email, many companies were unprotected without two-factor authentication. So when they got your password, they were able to sign into your email and do whatever they want. So in this particular instance, their email addresses were left on their website after countless times of telling them that this is not the best practice. If they have your email address, all they have to do is run a program to guess your password, whether it takes months or 6 months or a year. Eventually they're going to get it, and they don't have to do anything. It's just a program running. So they gained access to his email, and they sat in his email account for well over a month, monitoring everything, monitoring his current clients, his current projects. They found out who me and Neil were. They went into his email and set up rules that if we ever emailed, me or Neil ever emailed him, they would move it to a new folder they've created, mark it as read, so that the user would never see it ever. Then he got all of the clients that he was currently working with. So all of the current projects they are being paid to do. He emailed them all with new bank account information, where to send the invoices, with wiring transfer numbers, the bank address. It came from, I believe it was Boston. There was a bank in Boston that he wanted all of the money sent to. It came with a address, the bank, the account number, the routing number, everything. So we actually had to open up a case with the FBI, cybersecurity department, and based on all of the information that this guy sent with his bank account, they were able to track those account numbers and find who the account was linked to, and took care of that. But that is just an extreme example of how far these people will go to get even the slightest amount. And they did. Luckily, in this case, the bank called the accountant at this construction company and said, are you approving the transfer of $100,000 into this bank account? And she said, no idea what you're talking about. We're not moving any money. We have our banks here. And that's when everything came to us. And that's how we started our investigation into what was going on. And then we set up applications to cover all of their email accounts from that point, third-party applications, so that no one can get in ever again. So there always could be people watching. So you just got to be safe. Two-factor authentication, make sure your email is protected, make sure you're always looking at the email addresses.
Pam, did you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say that it's interesting because I've been working, I run into this problem the most probably with my mom in terms of she looks at the sender and the subject of an email, but doesn't, like, I have to show her all the time, how do you click for more info on who it's actually from? And I'll be like, because there was one, she got an email yesterday about a chamber golf tournament. I was like, look at the email. It's not any chamber we do anything with. It's literally, it wasn't even like phishing or anything. It was just like literally spam. But it's like literally an everyday thing of, remember, click this arrow. It'll show you who sent the email. And, Billy Joe Bob .microsoft@gmail.com is not Microsoft.
Right.
Your computer is not sending somebody an email saying your warranty's out of date.
Yeah, and that's the most common thing. Once people get your email address, then they have what are called spam bots that they will just sit and run and send everything they possibly can. And most of the time, these are attachments with viruses. So if you click it and it says, $3,000 free getaway to Hawaii, click here. Some people click that stuff still to this day in a business. And it's, especially with small businesses, I think it's important because we don't have that corporate level. We can't go to our 12 IT people in the other room and say, hey, what is this? You're all by yourself, maybe with one or two other people, and you accidentally clicked on this. And now what do? You don't have an IT company. So that's why I think it's important, if you have any questions, and that's why we try to educate people as much as we can, that, you know, there are resources that you can just reach out to for information. And there's plenty of websites and things that will help train you and your employees to learn about how to stop this before it ever occurs. And along with that email discussion Pam was having, there are third-party programs that can help the front line and help protect against that. With Barracuda Networks is who we use. They have all sorts of softwares that they can use to help filter through those issues. But there's never 100% with email. It's just not a secure line. You know, anyone can create anything they want and send it to whoever they want. So that's why we just have to stay educated and really stop it ourselves.
Eric, can you touch a little bit on the few minutes we have left on sort of the small business responsibility if you have a data breach in which, you know, somebody might have had access to your customers' credit cards? You get the great privilege of going to your customers and saying, I might have let out your credit card. And so it's a responsibility that's required, but from a reputational standpoint, you know, think about those letters you might have received in the mail that said, you know, your credit card company has lost your information. You kind of go, well, gosh, I'm not really sure that I need to have that credit card anymore. So I think that there's, you know, from a standpoint of it being obviously an annoyance and a problem, it also can be something where you know, your reputation becomes tarnished and it looks like you're not sort of being responsible for your customers' information.
Right. So your question is, how do we protect against, can you
Well, I think it's just from a standpoint of helping our small businesses understand that, you know, if they have a breach that includes losing customer credit cards, they're required to get that information out to their customers and let them know that they've had a breach and that their credit card, you know, might be at risk, and that just creates a whole reputational problem. And so, you know, this is stuff that's, you know, it can be an annoyance on an email where you have to delete it, but when you're not protecting your customers' information, it becomes really much more problematic. So it's, you know, it's something you got to really take pretty seriously.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, things like this do happen. And, you know, it's always recommended that if we have critical data like that, you know, that is the most protected thing in our business. It's behind a firewall. You have to input a password with dual authentication to get to it. There's no way that this can get out unless it's someone within the company. But if that does happen, I would say the best thing you could possibly do is reassure your clients that, you know, we're taking the correct steps and measures. We're going to spend, you know, the extra money to make sure that we have the best security that we can possibly have, and this will never happen again. And that's where, you know, someone like myself and Neil as a company or another IT company can come in and make sure that you have those practices in place so that this won't happen a second time.
So would you say, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Calvin.
Yeah, it's expensive, but Wells Fargo in that situation, they gave us, everybody, 2 years worth of credit monitoring. So they were monitoring our credit reports for us, and they would notify if somebody, you know, pulled our credit for any reason. And so I got that, you know, email, and twice somebody tried to do it that I didn't authorize, and it caught it. So I was like, hey, that's a great way to make sure your customers understand that you are protecting them and watching out for them.
Exactly.
So would you recommend the first step for a small business that has a breach, and you know, is their first option to contact a IT or cybersecurity company such as yourself, or go to the authorities? What's the best first step for them to take in case of a breach?
The best possible first step to take if you have a breach would be get your computer off the internet. I think that is the number one thing, especially with ransomware attacks. The first thing they're going to do once they're in is everything, encrypt everything. You're not going to be able to access anything. But as soon as you unplug, they can't access anything. So if you see, if you're like, oh, well, I just clicked on this email. Oh no, it wasn't from the person I thought it was from. And now all this stuff's popping up on my screen. Unplug it, get it off the Wi-Fi. And at that point, I would say the best thing to do would be to contact a IT company, a security specialist, because with ransomware in particular, the companies that attempt to decrypt that data to get it back to you without paying the ransom, they charge upwards of $3,000 to $4,000 an hour to do this process. It is, and it's not guaranteed. All of these ransomware encryptions are different. There's never the same thing. They're different file types they encrypt. And if you do pay the ransom, how can you trust them to give you the key?
Don't pay the ransom.
Never pay the ransom.
That's what happened to the company I was telling you about. Is they paid the 180,000, and then it was 500,000 later that they had to fix everything. So
right, yeah, and I would say, you know, with spoofing, we can input the DKIM, DMARC, and SPF stuff from a domain level, and we can always touch on that. I think we're presenting again on the 20th.
Yes.
And we can touch on that a little more. I can speak with Neil about talking a little bit more about that. And then with phishing, you know, they're just trying to get information as much as they can. First level education. If it does happen, same thing. I would just contact an outside source, explain to them what's going on, and, you know, get advice. I know no one in a small business, unless they're specializing in this, has enough knowledge about what to do. So it's always good to, you know, outsource security and things, unless that is specifically what your business does. So I would contact us, and if we come in and we think it's that bad, that's when the authorities can get contacted. But I'd say we should be the first contact when that happens.
Okay,
So,
we
Eric-
are at 11 o'clock. Oh, Christine, you have it. We are at 11. Do you
Yeah.
have a question now?
I did. As a new business just getting started, can you provide, you know, the basic services that we need to get us set up right with security?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing, assuming you guys have an email, do you have a domain?
I do.
Okay, yeah, so the first thing I would do is to make sure that you have dual authentication set up for any accounts you can that are related to your business. The second would be to make sure that your data can, if it's critical data, make sure that that data is being backed up. I know it's not the best practice to just do it on an external hard drive, but if that's the only option you have, then that's better than nothing. So back up your data, make sure that all of your passwords require a phone number or an app to get into them, especially banking, email, and things like that. And I think those two are great first steps, along with getting an antivirus, not the free one. The paid
Okay.
ones are cheap, and they do a tremendous job compared to a free antivirus like Avast or McAfee or something like that.
Okay.
And I think those would be just great first steps into making sure that everything is secure. You have a good backup, maybe do it every week, or, you know, contact someone like us or another IT company that you know to set up a consistent backup and security practice for your company.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Eric. And thanks for that question, Christine. We are after 11, so we do need to close. So I want to thank Eric Steffes and Neil Hatler from Stable Systems LLC for presenting on cybersecurity today. A lot of great information and a lot of great do's and don'ts, and how you can protect yourself, your business, your data, and your clients' data. We look forward to having Neil and Eric back at our next SBSS series on April 20th, same time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., along with Lindsay. She'll start the program talking about some cybersecurity that can be provided, and then Neil and Eric will finish that out. So if you are interested today, please come back to finish our cybersecurity month. And would like to send a thanks, shout out again to our sponsor, Elizabeth Case, Yellow Dog Consulting. Thank you once again for sponsoring the Small Business Solution Series for 2022. And we are now closed for the day, and see you on April 20th.